We are doing good. Hey, what's up, everybody? You on the couch with Ryan. Shout out to all of my main replay viewers, everybody on YouTube. And just, you know what I'm saying? I want to introduce my guest, the incomparable, amazing guy. Always has a joke, always has a smile, and just, an amazing friend. And I feel like confidant. But I want to introduce my main man, the Reverend Apostle. I don't know what else I can say to gas this up, but Mr. John Smith, how are you doing tonight, sir?
I'm I'm doing good, Ryan. I'm doing real good.
It's so good to have you. Thank you for taking out time. I know that you're an essential out here, and you're not just kind of kicking rocks like the most of us. So I appreciate you taking, some hours out of your day and away from the family, and you could be doing so much more stuff, but just sitting down and talking with me for a couple minutes.
No, it's definitely my pleasure, man. I enjoy. I've been watching what you're doing,
Come on.
and man, listen, this thing is going to get big. It's going to grow, man. And I know you probably started. You're saying, it's a little hobby, a little something I'm doing, but it's getting some speed. It's
Look,
getting
it's
some
people
speed.
like you, though. You know what I'm saying? That give me the opportunity to be able to put this on, and then I just, I reach out to people that I feel like have a story. They have an opportunity to, kill some time, but I also think too the message that we can't get out with the physical contact. I think it's an opportunity for us to be able to kind of let it out digitally. So it's just always an honor to do it with people, and I just appreciate you.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I mean, we're living in some crazy times right now. Like, most of us, we got plans, man. We say, oh, I'm gonna do this next week. I'm gonna do this next month.
Yeah,
But we're in times, man, where we just have to play it one afternoon at a time, one day at a time. And I mean, with everything, things are changing, and for the most part, we have no control over a lot of stuff.
hmm.
So it's different. It's rough.
Well, first, talk to me a little bit about how things are different for you, where you're at, comparable to 2 maybe 3 weeks ago, and just kind of how everything's kind of shifted differently where you're at.
Yeah, so I work for one of the largest food producers, distributors, processors, and so we are. If you notice, if you've been into any of the grocery stores, you go in, and it's hard to find a lot of frozen foods and things. In the meat department, and so what that turns into for me and for us is a lot of work,
Yeah,
and so a lot of what we do is essential. To people all over the world. We ship things to the United Arab Emirates. We ship things to Asia, all over the world, and a lot of our business has grown a lot domestically
hmm,
uh, because of this coronavirus situation and people. I don't want to use the word hoarding food, but people stocking up,
yeah,
a lot of things. So we're working, like, for me, 12 hours a day, 5 days a week. And so essentially, the challenges that we deal with now with this thing here in Georgia, with sheltering in place, they had to give us passes to show our badge and show this letter to be able to be on the roads. And essentially, we can only travel from to and from work, pick medication up or
yeah.
grocery store, things like that. But I think yesterday I passed a couple police officers and one stopped me, which was surprising because I'm only a mile away from my job. But
Yeah.
once he saw my badge, I didn't. He just said, "Go ahead." But
Hmm.
this thing is real, man.
Right.
This thing is real, and I don't know your part of Atlanta. I don't know how it's looking there, but
No, I mean South Atlanta is like you said, it's shut down. I think maybe the difference is like I'm used to being here in the springtime, and so I'm used to people just kind of like being out and just, you know what I'm saying, doing their thing. And so now when you don't see people out, it's weird. And then the amount of traffic, that's the other thing that just trips me out, because usually it's like bumper to bumper all the time. It take you 30 minutes to get anywhere. Now it's just, 16 lanes of traffic on 285, and it's like you could play football out there.
yeah, 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 and it's different. I think for me, more so than a lot of people, like 2.5 years ago, we went through two Category 5 hurricanes,
Hmm.
Hurricane Irma, Hurricane Maria, in the Caribbean. And so we were prepared for what we know what it's like to have curfews. We know what it's like to be told by the government to shelter in place. We know what it's like to stand. I mean, even worse, we stood in FEMA lines just to get food.
Wow.
We stood in grocery store lines for hours. I remember our first time out after the hurricanes. Me and one of my daughters, we stood in the grocery store line just to get ice, and we
Oh,
stood
because the
maybe
power was out and you couldn't
yeah.
make ice. Yeah.
We had no power and no running water for 2 months. And so I tell people, you either learn how to swim or you sink.
Yeah.
And so that prepared us. So what we're going through now, for myself and our family, we've been through worse.
Hmm.
We've been through worse. We've seen destruction. We have had to catch rainwater, in orange buckets to be able to bathe. We've had to boil water. We've had to go 2 months to cook on a grill. So what we're going through with this right now is not a,
So
you know,
you the grill master then. It's not a
man,
game. You get out there with it.
it is not a game.
Yeah.
You learn a whole lot. I think through this time, even Ryan, I think that there are things that people can learn from what we're experiencing. But I think sometimes we got to get out of the complaint. When you
Mm.
stop complaining, you start understanding things a little differently, and we start to realize how spoiled we've been as United States citizens.
Yeah.
I think we got a lot of things. We take a lot of things for granted, and so these are times where we can learn. These are times where we reflect, because like guys like you and guys like guys like you, guys like me, a lot of us, we travel a lot, we're doing a lot, we're involved in a lot.
I ain't going nowhere.
It's weird when you have to sit down.
No, seriously, like I'm used to like I'm probably 7 minutes from the most busiest airport in the country. And I was one of the main people. It's like I'm going through with clear. I'm dropping my bags. I know exactly what to wear in the airport, just like you, and I'm moving. So now I'm in this space where I'm just thinking like, okay, when will I go someplace other than to Walmart or Target or back to the house? Because now with all the shelter in place, it's almost like you feel like you're putting yourself or potentially your family at risk just by doing those regular things. So that kind of led me to my next question. Um, are you concerned being around groups larger than what the CDC is recommending when it comes to being an essential employee?
Yeah, yeah, I am. We found out, so I work midnight. So every morning before we leave, we have a meeting, and the group of people that I work with, it's about 15 of us. And our
Hmm.
supervisor, was talking to us, and he was open. He said, that the corporate just let him know that one of the employees, not in the building that we work in, but one of the employees tested positive for coronavirus. And I want to tell you, what was challenging for me is I had asked questions a couple of days before about, how much information we would be given. And I understand privacy and HIPAA, but if I'm working next to somebody and this person tests positive, or if I'm working in the same building, I think I have a right to know.
Yeah.
And so he shared with us somebody was positive. And when I tell you that in that building, people work maybe 2 feet apart, and I'm talking hundreds of people,
Yeah.
2 to 3 feet apart, and they eat lunch sitting at a table less than a foot apart from
Yeah.
each other.
Well, that's how
And
it's set up. Yeah.
yeah, so here's the other thing I'm learning, that in corporate America, it's profit over people.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, that comes with it. I mean, that's the whole point.
Yeah,
It's about shareholders, not about employees at the end of the
right.
day.
Yeah, so so you learn, and some things are reaffirmed just to remind you that you won't find the CEO or the corporate people working during this
Mhm.
time, but they sure want the employees there.
That I mean, that's facts though. I mean, do
Yeah,
you, do you feel like now that it is more of a pandemic situation that's more of a viral, is it uh more scarier than when you were in St. Croix and the hurricane came, it left, and then you were trying to pick up the pieces and function comparable to where this, I think, where it's like it's almost like you're in a constant state of fear until we get that all clear in a couple of months that hey, you're okay. Do you feel like it's a different type of caution that you think about, or I guess concern comparable to when you were in the islands?
I think it is for Kia, for my wife.
Yeah.
For me, it's not.
Hmm.
But for her, it is, being that she works at a hospital
Hmm.
here in Georgia, and the floor that she works on is the COVID-19 floor. So
Oh
she's
man.
dealing with several positive patients all night. And she takes caution. She was already a very cautious person.
Of course,
But
yeah. If you're a
yeah,
nurse, yeah.
but I'm not fearful. I'm concerned, but I'm just not fearful. I go to work, and I don't care if I offend people. I tell people, if they want to talk to me, please step back. You know,
Yeah, you got the. I need you to back up just a couple of feet before we start getting too deep.
because you said it. The fear or the concern is not necessarily for me, but bringing it home to my family.
Yeah.
And I think for us as men, as fathers, as husbands, we have a different concern than maybe our wives. They have a concern, but for us, we go into that protective mode. We go into the, I'm good. I can do this. I can deal with this. I just don't want my wife and my children,
Hmm.
to suffer. And so I don't think it's fear for me. I think it's extreme concern. But again, going through what I went through in the islands with a lot of things,
Hmm.
it kind of prepared me for tragedy, for
Yeah.
traumatic situations. So but I'm using extreme caution.
I
You know, it,
understand. No, I
yeah,
understand. And I think that's one of those things where now you can't be ruled by fear, but then I also feel like you can't also let lax caution be something to rule you either. Because I feel like if you're too lax, maybe you put yourself in a bad situation or your family. Then I feel like you're too cautious, you know what I'm saying? You also have to be able to live. And realistically, you could potentially have it and be too cautious. So I
right.
mean, I don't really see it as being, you can go one way or the other. I think you just got to kind of ride the line down the middle and just be as safe as you can and hopefully be able to have some semblance of regular life through this.
Yeah, and I think too, what we learned with the situations with the hurricanes is, Kia and we began to have conversations. And so I think that we have the conversation now. Right, just be honest. We have the conversations about, if I'm on a ventilator, this is what I want. This is what I would.
Wow.
We have those conversations, and I think that people avoid those conversations. But when you think about it, like in the past week, I personally know of
Hmm.
6 people that have passed
Personally.
personally,
Wow.
like personally know these people, and
Do
then I
you do
know
you know if all of those people had pre-existing conditions, or do you know if they were just, middle of
yeah,
the road healthy people?
I don't know.
Uh-huh.
I don't know. I have one lady who has been a prayer warrior, who has prayed for our family for years. I mean, constantly interacting, checking on us through Facebook. She's on a ventilator right now in Pontiac,
Wow.
and she was perfectly healthy,
Hmm.
prior to. But when the coronavirus hit her, it within 4 or 5 days, she ended up on a ventilator. And then I know of another brother who is maybe 3 years older than me, 3 or 4 years older than me, who just passed. And he was loved by many, in Pontiac, and husband, children.
Yeah.
And so, Ryan, I think we avoid those conversations, because we act as if these things will never happen to us. And I think that's what our problem has been with the United States
Hmm.
and throughout the world. We say, well, it's no big deal as long as it doesn't knock on my door.
That's the scary part, because now I feel like as much as I wanted it to be in China or I wanted it to be in, San Francisco, it's like, man, all right, so, you have a pandemic 100 years ago. We didn't have airplanes and railroads taking everybody, across the country and across the world so quickly. So now, like you said, it's at my doorstep. And now it's like, how do I react to it? And, also, like, one thing I wanted to ask you is, with all that going on, how do you keep your mental health uh motivated at this point? Because I feel
Yeah,
like, to me, you're one of the most motivating people that I can I just be as honest as I can be. One of the most motivating people that I can, look at your page and get some positivity. And I know that, you go through battles and storms just like anybody else, but I kind of want to get your perspective about all this negativity that goes around. Where do you find that motivation to keep pushing?
I tell the truth.
Mm,
If I'm sad, I'll tell you I'm sad. If I'm angry, I'll tell you I'm angry. If my marriage is going through a tough time, I'll tell you that. If I'm happy, I'll tell you that. I think that we wear masks, and for years I wore many masks. For everybody else. I think 18, 19 years of ministry, 12 years of pastoral leadership, father, with children from the age of 29 all the way to 18, husband married for 19 years and some months. I wore a mask for a long time and in many areas. And some would call it, people pleasing. And it's not something I chose to do. It's something, those saying, they say, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
yeah.
Well, how do you find yourself in difficult situations? One decision at a time. Well, but telling the truth is so important for me. Being transparent is what some call. I think it's refreshing for others, but it's life giving for me. Like I don't like to hide, man. I don't like to hide, and so my mental health, I can honestly say, in almost 20 years of marriage, my mental, my emotion. I just posted something today. My mental, emotional, physical, everything, my marital is the best it's ever been because I'm living in truth and freedom. And I think that's where people struggle. We suppress,
Hmm.
so much. We feel like we can't talk to our spouse about this. We feel like we can't tell our kids the reality of what's going on. We feel like and then we numb it. We numb it with alcohol, we numb it with drugs, we numb it with Netflix, we numb it
Hmm.
with Facebook, social media. And for me, my mental health is great in at this time of my life because, man, nobody has a heaven or a hell to put me in.
Right.
I'm not afraid, as a pastor, I'm not afraid to say I battled with alcoholism. I'm not afraid to say, I struggle with this or I struggle with that. I'm not afraid to tell the truth. And I think that's the problem with a lot of people. We live in a box, which really is a prison.
Yeah. What's the difference between transparency and candor in your thought process? Because I feel like some people would take that as being uh, difficult to deal with. Like you said, if I'm mad, I'm mad. If I'm frustrated, I'm frustrated. If I'm sad, I'm sad. But I feel like you said some people they want you to put that mask on. So how do you define that? Because some people might see that as difficult to be with, in a relationship or a father or a coworker.
Yeah. I, for me, where I'm at right now, whether it's being candid or whether it's being transparent, where I'm at right now,
Hmm.
what you see is what you get. And
Right.
and for me, I've come to the place uh, of 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 divine priorities,
Hmm.
making sure that my relationship with God is first, but then also understanding that God gave me a wife
Hmm.
and God has allowed me to steward over some children, be responsible for them. And as long as my wife loves me, as long as God wakes me up, and as long as my children listen to me, for the most part, those priorities are at the top of my list. People's feelings are going to sway left and right. People going to like you today, people going to like your post today, and all these things.
Hmm.
But I think that I have to like me first, and I have to love me. And I'll be honest, I'm 47 years old, and I didn't start liking me until this year.
Wow, that's a huge statement. I mean, but I mean, I feel like some people can connect with that because I feel like you said if you're wearing this mask, you don't really identify with liking that appearance that you're putting on for the world. So I mean,
Yeah,
to be able to like the appearance that you're going out with, like to your point, saying this is who I am and this is what you're gonna get. It's probably pretty easy to be comfortable in that than trying to be comfortable with a facade that you're just trying to prop up for
yeah,
everybody else.
yeah. About a year and 4 months ago, a good friend, I was going through man, I said a hell of a time
Hmm.
in my life. And nobody really knew, or at least they didn't know enough to say something to me. You know, as long as I'm showing up, pastoring the church, as long as I'm leading the ministry school, as long as I'm praying for people and baptizing, and as long as I'm showing up at home, you know, for the most. Let me. It's a little sidebar.
Hmm.
I think people are by nature selfish,
Yeah.
and they don't realize they're selfish. But people want what they want, and people will position you where they want you to be for their benefit. And over time, there was an episode on Twilight Zone when I was a kid.
Hmm.
In this episode, people wore these masks. And then it came to a point where it was time to take the mask off. And they took the mask off, and their faces still looked like the mask. Even though they took the physical mask off, they had been wearing it so long, it became their appearance.
Hmm.
And I think that's how it is. Sometimes we play a role or a position for so long that we don't realize that the scene is over with, so to speak, that production is over with. And so for me, I've been Pastor John for so long. I've been Reverend John Smith for so long
Yeah.
that I could be that and do that without any effort.
Hmm.
And so I really was presenting myself in a way while inwardly I'm dying and was in pain. But people felt like, well, as long as he can be Pastor John for me, then that's all I care about. And so I realized, Ryan, that I had to start liking me and loving me. So a year and 4 months ago, a friend who's a therapist said to me, they said, "Who is John?"
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, John's a father, John's a husband, John's a pastor, John's a community leader, John's this." And he said, "No, not what does John do, but who is John?"
Hmm.
And brother, I burst out in tears because I no longer knew who I was. I no longer knew who John was. I knew who Pastor John was. I knew what Pastor John did. I knew who I was as a husband. I knew who I was, but I no longer knew who I was as it pertains to who God created me at the core to be. I no longer knew. And so January of 2018, no, January 2019, I started the U-turn in my life and figuring out who I was.
Hmm.
And I began to like me. And I think it's been this year. It was a year process, but it's been this year. I like me a whole lot, man. I really like me. And I've never been able to say that because I never knew who I was. Because I wore the mask for so long. I was a people pleaser for so long
Hmm.
that I lost myself. And I think it's a lot of people that have lost themselves.
Well, do you find like one of the things that I wanted to ask you, I thought about earlier today, was just what would you say to people that are with everything that is going on right now, struggling with their faith and being able to hang on to it? I mean, what do you have a conversation with a person that's saying, you know what, it's not something that I am excited about, and it's not something that I feel like I am motivated about. Do you feel like there's something that you could tell them about, what you've been through that potentially could, I guess, open the door for them to have a little bit better of a understanding, or potentially uh, an opportunity to think about their faith in a different way?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that there's a difference in telling the truth and living the truth.
Mm,
And for me, I can tell you the truth, but it doesn't mean that I'm living in the truth. And I think that we have become so accustomed to telling the truth, but we really don't know what it means to live in that truth. And I could tell people that I battled with alcoholism for probably 20 years.
mhm.
And I could tell people that of those 20 years, 14, 15 of those years, I never touched a drink. And I can tell people out of those 20 years, the last 6 months, I've been alcohol delivered from alcohol.
Mhm.
Those are things I can tell you that truth, but guess what? I'm living in that truth now. I'm living in the truth of what my struggles were. I know scripture from Genesis to Revelation. I know I can quote scripture. I
Mhm.
can talk with the greatest theologians and I can do those things.
Right.
But if I'm not living it, then I'm lacking the power. And so I've decided for me that I've had to shift things down. I've had to slow down my personal walk. I'm stronger in my faith now than when I was in the pulpit every Sunday.
Right.
Because there's a difference in studying to get a sermon and studying to have a sermon live in you. And now for me, I study to have the sermon live alive, to be alive in me. Because before it was always, let me get this sermon to give to everybody. Let me do
Yeah.
this to give. And eventually, when you drive a car, your tank will go empty. And I think there's a lot of people right now, there's a lot of leaders, pastors, people, mothers whose tank is empty
Right.
and they just won't stop at the gas station. They just keep pushing it. They driving on fumes. And with this coronavirus and people are in their homes, mental health, spiritual health is in jeopardy right now with a lot of people, because a lot of people's lives are slowed down and they're not used to that. Because people think if I stay busy, I never have to deal with my pain. If I stay busy, I never have to deal with my marriage. If I stay busy, I never have to deal with my kids. If I stay busy, I never have to look at myself. And so this is that time where people need to live in truth. If you're hurting, say you're hurting. Reach out to somebody. If your marriage is going through it, talk to somebody about it. You know, if it's tough, I know, you know, situation with the job, talk about it.
Yeah.
And it blessed me, man. When you began to speak about that thing, you helped some people. What you doing? That's what I'm saying. What you doing on the couch? It may seem simple.
Yeah.
But man, listen, you helping more people than some people do from the pulpit.
Look, I feel like that's one of the reasons though that you know, when I wanted to try to get started, I thought to myself, you know, what am I going through right now? And at the time it was like I'm just seeing things from an objective point. You know, I help people get hired, you know, get them an opportunity to get to work. And then when I lose that opportunity, I'm like, man, okay, I do that as a job every day. Imagine, you know what I'm saying, the person that's just going to work, they got let go and they don't really know the process and they don't understand what it looks like going to try to get unemployment and really trying to go through the process of being afraid. Some people have only had one or two jobs. I grew up in Michigan, just like you, and a lot of my family members, when this happened back in 2008, 2009, it was a situation where the rest of the world was kind of running and doing their thing. So now it's like everybody's down. So I think with that happening, it was like, okay, the one little thing that I thought that I could do is just share my experience and my story. And I think it's been one of those real positive vibes that it's only come back double fold. I've had blessings from people that have just hit my inbox and just said, you know what, I wasn't able to do that, you know, put myself out there. But I feel like you said, to your point, the transparency is that everything ain't roses. And you know, I appreciate you being real like that, because I'm always seeing happy memes and funny stuff, you know, and I'm not happy and I'm not, you know, trying to be funny. I just feel like I want to know that there is a other side to what's going on. And I think that's the cool thing about like what you said, being able to focus on yourself in the last 20 years and be able to say, you know what, I'm more happy in the last 18 months than I have been in the last 20 years. That's an amazing statement to say. How do you feel like being able to parent a child that's 29 years old comparable to an 18-year-old? You know, how do you feel like that's difficult for you in the space where you're trying to focus on being the best you could be?
You know, and out of our six children,
Yeah.
four girls, two boys, and when I tell you, all of them are like their own person. Like none of them are the same. And you know, I would say Marissa, you know, being 29, you know, I was 18 when she was born. I wasn't the greatest father, and you know, a lot of challenges and struggles, but our relationship is so intimate and loving, and it's not a friendship, it is daddy and daughter.
Yeah.
It is, you know, I'm like that with my girls. They're all my babies. But I can say that, and I tell other fathers this, that from the age of 14 to about 19, your voice is not the most important voice to your daughter.
Oh, don't say that to me, man. Don't do that. That hurts. That ain't what I'm trying to hear. I just picked her up and gave it a beautiful little hug and nestled down into the bed. You gonna tell me that? Oh,
Yep. Yep. That's why you got to store. That's why you got to store those memories. You got to keep them, because they'll help you through that 14 to 19, but when that 19, it is my experience, when that 19 hits,
Mm-hmm.
become important again because your daughters begin to experience adulthood.
Yeah.
And so the 14 to 18, 19, their peers are important. And what the world says is important. But 19, that's when they start getting their own bills. That's when they start dealing with dilemmas. And your voice becomes important again.
Mm.
So for Marissa at 29, my voice is of the utmost importance. Like when I text her or call her and just say, "Hey, I love you. I'm proud of you."
Yeah.
Like she'll respond like, "Dad, you almost brought me to tears, while I was at work," because a daddy's voice is huge
Yeah.
for his daughter. A daddy's voice is humongous in the life of his daughter. All her life, it is important. And so the 18-year-old, John A, who's 18, I'm huge in her life, but she won't tell me.
Mm.
She doesn't tell me. She shows me. She'll snuggle up to me and everything, but I give her about another year.
Yeah.
About another year, and I'll be important because she's starting to, she's working and she's got college ahead of her, and
Yeah.
I'll be important again.
Does it make it easier though? Because I always tell people, like, when I had my daughter, I think my son was 3 turning 4 at the time.
Hmm.
And I was just so happy that I don't know, it was like I don't want to say I was happy, but I was just overjoyed when she came out, and it was like, oh, 10 toes, 10 fingers. And I don't know what happened, but probably in that first week or so, we had this weird connection, and it was just like immediate. And it was like, all right, we're gonna do this. Like, oh, okay, cool. Like, you my little road dog now. But I think it was easier to be a parent the second time.
Yeah.
Do you feel like the things that your 18-year-old is going through, you've seen like 4 times? I mean, you've literally been like, all right, cool. I know what's gonna happen, because next week you're gonna be mad about this boy, and then it's gonna close itself out, and I'm just gonna let you do your thing because I'm
Yeah.
not that big voice, like you said. Do you find it easier as time goes on?
No.
No,
No.
not at all.
Because not only do they change, the
Mhm.
times change, and then we
Yeah.
change. We change. I think, man, it's something because I've had to go to my 29-year-old on how to deal with things with the 18-year-old.
Mm.
I think that I'm also learning to allow um, Marissa, who's my oldest, to give me. Let's see, how can I say this? I've had to allow her to tell me, "Dad, just back off."
Mm.
And I value her advice. And I've also learned that my wife, um,
Are you a
you know,
fixer though, John? Are you a fixer to your kids? I mean, are you wanting to be that?
absolutely,
Yeah.
I'm a fixer to everything.
Yeah.
And that's part of the healing that I'm going through right now. It's not my job to fix, it's my job to love.
Mm.
And it's two different things. And I've always blended them together. That if I love you, then
I
of
can
course
fix it.
fix it. And it's not the same thing. And I realize that there are some things, like especially in a marriage, I realize I'm a fixer. I've been a fixer for my marriage, but I think that's part of the problem because I was more of a fixer than I was a lover, so to speak. I emotionally disconnected, but I was always there to fix things when they went wrong. But my emotions, and I realized my daughters and my wife, my children and my wife needed me to be emotionally present. And I felt like as long as I'm financially present, as long as I'm physically present,
Big
as
facts.
long as I'm making sure we got everything we need as far as stuff. What's the problem?
Yeah. I think that's
Brother.
I think that's men in general though, and I think sometimes we get caught up in that. As long as I'm taking care of or checking those boxes, and I'm not
Mhm.
really looking at you outside of those boxes, it's like you said, we change over time, physically,
Yeah.
mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And I think that's one of the things that, I just really wanted to get to the meat of. What is the hardest part for you when it comes to being in a pastoral leadership role and taking a break for your mental?
Yeah.
for your physical and spiritual. What's the hardest part of that for you, being that you were, like you said, the leader of a flock for a long time?
Yeah, yeah. I think the hardest part, and it's changed over the last. So it's been about 4 months, 5 months since I have been physically in place, physical leadership. In the Virgin Islands, it's been 5 months, 4 or 5 months, and I think my first 3 weeks, 4 weeks, the hardest part was guilt, feeling guilty,
Because John,
feeling.
if I'm honest, I've never seen a pastor say, "I'm going to take a break for myself," and maybe it's just because I haven't been in the circles. But
Yeah,
I don't. Usually, it's I'm retiring. It's not that
yeah.
I'm taking a
I,
time frame to myself.
I'll tell you why. Because it's no different than, and I'm gonna use extreme terms. It's no different than a crack head having difficulty saying I'm addicted. It's no different than an alcoholic saying I'm addicted.
Hmm.
Pastors become addicted to ministry. We become addicted, and I'm saying it in a way because there is a healthy involvement that I was not partaking in. I'll speak for me. I
Hmm.
became addicted. One of my good friends, Ituha Cloud, he's a Christian rapper. He gave me a book maybe a month before we moved to the Virgin Islands to do missionary work, pastoral leadership. And the book was called Addicted to Busy. And there's a difference between being busy and being fruitful. And there's a lot of pastors and leaders and people that are just busy, but busyness doesn't mean fruitfulness. A lot of activity doesn't mean you're accomplishing fruit. And I think that I have accomplished a lot that people were happy with, communities were happy with, being involved with government, doing consultant work in the mental
Hmm.
health field, all of these different things. But as I was giving of myself, Ryan,
Hmm.
I was losing myself as well. And so when I think about it, pastors, a lot of pastors are addicted to the applause, to the amens,
Hmm.
to the role.
How could you
Um,
not? How could you not though? That's what I mean. I feel like if you start at a young age, and especially a person like you have a story to tell about how ministry has changed your life, taking you across the world, seeing things that you potentially would have never seen. How could you not be addicted to
yeah,
having that?
yeah. And think about this: when addiction happens, it affects the whole family. It affects everybody connected to you.
Hmm.
And so I remember a year back in Michigan where 3 pastors committed suicide that same year. Successful pastors committed suicide. And I remember last year, pastor of a mega church in California who was an advocate for mental health. It took a sabbatical for like 4 months and then came back to the church. And then I believe shortly after he committed suicide, wife and children, wife and a son. And so those were things that I had to be truthful with myself about. Have I battled with suicidal thought? Yes,
Hmm.
since a teenager. Have I battled with alcoholism? Yes, since a teenager. Have I battled with these? And I think the problem is people think that the pastor is Superman, and the pastor begins to believe that he's Superman when he's
Right.
really Clark. He's Clark Kent. He's Clark Kent. And I think that the demands on keeping the church doors open, the demands on making sure people are okay, visiting people in the hospital, praying for people, families get neglected. And in my case, it took a 911 situation in my marriage and with my family
Hmm.
for me to hit rock bottom to realize my priorities are out of place. And I can tell you right now, many pastors think their families are okay, and they're not. They're not. And it took a young lady years ago telling me her father was a pastor, and he said to his daughter, "Said, honey, tell Pastor John what advice would you give to Pastor John, daughter in college?" And she said, "Don't assume that just because your children are in a pastor's home that they're okay."
Mm.
And that's always stuck with me. And there's a lot of pastors that assume. There's a lot of people that assume, like there's a lot of people that assume that just because the daddy is bringing home money, just because he's bringing home food and doing all these things, that the family is okay, and they're not. And that's why you have to have those conversations. You got to ask. You got to sit down. You got to talk to your wife or your husband or whoever. You got to talk. What if God is forcing us all to sit down and be in our houses with our families for us to talk?
Mm.
But we rather Netflix and chill.
It's gonna be a lot of Corona babies. Just know that.
Yeah,
But you
yeah.
know what though? I think about it, and I was having another conversation because that's all we can do because we can't,
Mhm.
see each other physically. I had a conversation with a friend, and they just said, you know what? I want to learn a different skill. I want to take this time and really focus on myself, but then also focus on trying to get better. So when this ends, prayerfully, when I come out on the other side, I have something else to go out there with. And I think
Yeah.
that's something where God might be saying, hey, maybe that business that you were thinking about, maybe this is the time to focus on it. I'll take away what you feel like is keeping you busy, and I'll have you focus on me, or I'll have you focus what you need to. And maybe that's you focusing on your life. Maybe you end up in the hospital. Maybe you in that situation that you say, man, you know what? It's really hard for me to go get my drug of choice right
Mhm.
now, and maybe I need to start thinking about sobriety and different things like that. What does the word love mean to you?
What it means to me now and what it meant to me, say a year ago, is a little different. To me, love. I guess the best way I can define love is it's what God extends to me every day,
Hmm.
and it is a love that cannot be contained in words. It cannot be contained in a specific deed. Um, you see me put all the time, love is the word.
Hmm.
And for me, love is the word, and the word is God. The word is Christ Jesus, our
Hmm.
Lord and Savior, and they're one and the same. Love is the word, and the word is God. It's one and the same. There's no separation from it. The only true, divine, real love is the love that God extends to us every day. Well, what is God's love? He wakes you up every day. He's blessed you with children. He's given you air to breathe. He's giving you a roof over your head. And we can go on and on. His provision, his love, his care, his mercy. Even with this situation with coronavirus, it's like we'll say God is good, but then tragedy happens, and what, God isn't good still?
Yeah.
God stopped being good because tragedy has happened. God is still good. God still loves us. And I think we're challenged right now. What if the reason all this is going on is God is saying, you know what? I want to test everybody's faith and see where they're really at. I want to see where everybody's faith. If they're still gonna worship me when the church doors are closed,
Hmm.
if they're still gonna worship me when they lose their job, if they're still gonna praise me through a personal storm, if they lose a loved one.
Hmm.
And I think these are the times when we really have to examine ourselves. And
Hmm.
that's what I'm doing, Ryan. I ain't got time to judge you. I ain't got time to judge pastors. I don't care whose church doors are open during this time or not.
Hmm.
I'm focused on my personal relationship with the Lord.
Do you find it hard though to self audit or self steer when you feel like you potentially could be going through a storm or you could be going through an illness? Do you find it hard to say, okay, you know what, I'm down right now? Whether, like you said, is a job, is an illness, is it a situation where I can't leave my house? Do you find it hard in those situations to do that type of audits of yourself to try to be better, or do you feel like that's the time to do it because you don't have another option?
Yep. For me personally, this is the time to do it. The last 4 or 5 months for me has been the time to do it. I've had to humble. I've struggled financially. I'm in a new environment. Not in the Virgin Islands right now. Situations where I felt like I wasn't in control of anything. And I realized this. I preached a sermon years ago. I've preached it a couple of times, and the sermon series is called "There's Value in Your Valley." And I
Mm.
think that we miss out on the value of those valley moments because we're so busy trying to get to the mountaintop, and we think that we're going to learn so much, have so much on the top of the mountain. We don't learn things when we reach this high level. We learn our lessons in the valley. And so I think, when we think about, scripture, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, and you begin to realize, then you see the psalmist talks about, his relationship with God. He learned things about God while in his valley. He learned about the shepherd in his valley. And I think that these are the valley moments in our lives where we can learn about God. And in turn, we learn about God and he teaches us about ourselves. I learn about you, God. You teach me about myself. I learn about you, and it becomes a reciprocal blessing. It becomes intimacy. It becomes relationship that we have with God. But again, Facebook and Netflix and all these things are still distractions.
Mm-hmm.
They're distractions. I mean, not for everybody. I'm talking about for me.
Mm-hmm.
These things are distractions because what God desires, people say, well, God, I want to give you everything. God's like, I just want your heart.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't need the stuff. Because if God has your heart, he'll get everything else. And so, when you talk about love, man, there's a different love that I have for God than I have for my wife. It's different. It's different. And so my love for God and his love for me is there's no words for it, Ryan. I believe, not I feel, but I believe that what I know about God now, I've never known about it ever in my life. Some things happened today. Provision happened today that I know was God saying, I love you, boy. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
because it's personal. It's personal, Ryan. And so the self inventory is necessary for all of us. But I love, the more that I love God, the more I learn how to love my family.
What's the hardest part though for you in the valley to learn?
Um, the hardest part in the valley for me to learn is I think I'm a hard critic on myself. I blame myself a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and so I usually have to overcome that because the mentality has been I'm a fixer. So what happens when the fixer can't fix himself? What happens when the fixer's tools are rusted and they're no longer working?
Mm-hmm.
And you really have to, and it's like God is like, God sit back and he's like, oh, so you gonna fix this? Yeah, God, I got this. And God's like, all right, let me know when you're done. Let me know when you're done. I mean, I think that's how God talks to me. He's like, okay, let me know when you're done so I can go ahead and do this. So it really becomes, the hardest part in the valley is really dependency on God versus depending on what I think my paycheck is, what I think I got this, I can do this, I got this skill, I got this ability. And God's like, you have nothing without me.
Do
So
you
so
do you ever see yourself potentially um moving away from the sabbatical and getting into a leadership role anytime soon?
I don't know what soon is, but I'm definitely not done with ministry, man.
Hmm.
Ministry is not what I do, it's who I am.
Right.
It is who I am. I still love, my family loves missionary work. My wife, I can tell you this, Kia loves ministry as much as I do. But what I did, Ryan,
Hmm.
was I made ministry a turnoff for her.
Hmm.
She loves the Lord. She loves ministry. She loves serving people. But I made it a turnoff for my wife because I made ministry my wife and I made my wife my side chick.
That in itself, it needs to be a T-shirt. I feel like we're all in the, it's like don't make obviously your wife a side chick in any way. I mean, did you feel like that was something that came with the years in the ministry and just like you said, dedicating yourself more and more into trying to be a fixer for everyone that you were, leading? Or was that a situation where you just said, hey, you know what, we're gonna do this missionary work. I'm gonna just throw myself into it 100%, and you're just coming along for the ride?
I think that's part of it, but I can tell you like what Kia said, and I can tell you, just in a turbo version of what our conversation has been, is that Pastor John didn't marry Kia, and Kia didn't marry Pastor John. She
Mm.
married John, and so as long as I was Pastor John, there was aught between us because Pastor John didn't love Kia, and Kia didn't love Pastor John. John is crazy about Kia, and Kia is crazy about John. So as long as I was acting and living as Pastor John, there was no intimacy and emotional connection in my marriage. And so for me, the sabbatical and stepping away from ministry was getting back to first knowing who Pastor John is, liking and loving and understanding who God has called John to be, and then learning how to build a friendship. Me and my
Mhm.
wife been married almost 20 years, and we come to the realization that we got married, we had ready-made family. She had children, I had children, we had children, we adopted. We had a ready-made family, we jumped into ministry, and we never built a friendship. And I think the problem is there's a lot of people that are married that aren't friends.
That I mean, I feel like that's something that we all can see. Sometimes I think about having a daughter, and I really want her to be in a space where when she does, make that decision, I hope that it's not one that potentially is like, hey, this is a better financial situation for me, and I can't leave this situation because I'm tied in, like you said, with children and other things like
Yeah.
that. So it's like I want you to come into it knowing that you're a whole person going in, and realistically, you're able to be a whole person coming out.
Yeah. And I think that goes back to what we were saying in the beginning. That's being able to speak truth to our children. I learned early on that that my children, I was always going to give my children truth.
Hmm.
And the visual that I had was, there's some things that my parents didn't share with me. There's some things that Kia's parents didn't share with her. And I don't want to say they were lies, but I think that there's so many families that withhold those things, those secret things in the families that nobody wants
Those
to
Tyler
talk about.
Perry secrets. Come on now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I made my mind up that I didn't want to do that with my children. So I've always given them more information than they can handle,
Hmm.
because the visual was always, I'm going to tell you this information. If you can't digest it or eat it right now, put it on a plate, put some foil over it, and save it for when you're ready. And so I've seen the fruit of that, with my children, that telling them the truth. Because if you don't tell your children the truth, as they grow, they'll make a truth up,
Ooh.
and it may not be a good thing. Because think about it, we begin to develop our own perceptions and our own thoughts and ideas about things that we don't know.
Hmm.
And so I just believe in giving our children the information at the appropriate age,
Right.
giving them the information and walking with them to reach a healthy understanding. And then I've also made it a point to make sure that my children don't carry any of the weight that they don't that doesn't belong to them. So there are things that alcoholism had done to me that caused me to be absent, as a young father. There are things, a lustful life, chasing women as a young father at 18 and 20 years old with two children, that caused my children to not have me
But
around.
I also think too, John, that I mean, being an 18 or 20-year-old man, realistically chasing women is just par for the course. And,
Yeah,
and obviously having children, that does not bode well. But I also
right.
feel like that's something that, yeah, I mean, as a child, you'll probably look at it and say, well, why wasn't my dad here when I was doing these different things? Oh, because he was out there, doing his thing. So I
Yeah,
mean, I find it difficult sometimes because I always say on the show, like hindsight is 2020. But I also feel like it goes right back to the point that you said that I'm not learning anything if I'm only, what I'm saying, spitting my knowledge from the mountaintop. It's about going through that journey and understanding, like, man, maybe I should invest in my kids. Maybe I should be there
yeah,
because I wasn't. And I can see the difference now in how you raise your kid. And that's what I was going to say. With your 18-year-old, do you
yeah.
feel like, some of those mistakes that you made as that young father, do you feel like they are erased with her because you did things in a different way, or do you feel like you just made different mistakes?
I think that I've learned from those things and have made adjustments. But again, I also feel like you're still gonna make different mistakes.
Very
It's
different
not
mistakes. That's another.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, not the same ones. But but again, and you kind of enlightened me on that. It is different mistakes, and I think that's a part of that has been a part of my problem, because I beat myself up a lot, and that's one area where I'm getting healing and understanding, that mistakes are okay.
Hmm.
It's okay. Like, I'm not going to be perfect, and I think, as Pastor John, I always felt like I had to um, kind of reach a level of not perfection, but strive for that,
Hmm.
in every area. And I was setting benchmarks for myself that I couldn't reach.
Did those benchmarks trickle down to your family as well as your wife?
100%. Any struggles that I had, my wife and my children received the remnants of that.
Hmm.
And I think, it goes back to, when I was 18 and 20. I think my thing is not, I don't beat myself up of those mistakes. And I think part of the healing of that is I made sure, because this was important. I didn't want my children to think that it was something that they did to cause me to not be there. I think that was so important. Kids need to know that it wasn't their fault.
Hmm.
Kids need to know that there was nothing they did. And even when, if it's a divorce, or if it's you're not no longer with the kid's mother, they need to know, the children need to know that they were not the reason that their parents are not together. And I think there's a high level of children that grow up trying to sort the thing out of why, or what did I do? What could I have done better to help my parents to make it through? And so I'm focusing more now on making sure that my children, my family, my household is good, because I've spent so many years making sure everybody else's household is good,
What do you
you know.
tell John at 20 uh, that he can do so that he can start liking himself so that he doesn't have to wait 20 years to get to that point?
What would I have told John? Um, to be honest, John at 20 wouldn't have listened to anything.
Hmm.
I mean, I could tell John at 20 years old was consumed with alcohol, lust, gambling, pornography, selling drugs, all of those things. I was just, and I look
That's
at
a
it now.
trifecta.
Yeah, yeah. And the list goes on and on and on.
Right, right,
And
right,
yes,
right.
at 20 years old, I was in college, wasting a lot of money in college. But Ryan, I'll add this to it. John at 20 years old was in pain and had no understanding of um, how to release it, because nobody had the courage, and maybe I didn't have the ear to listen or the heart to be willing to receive. So people just kind of let John at 20 do his own thing.
Hmm.
I was the prodigal son. And but I don't think I would have listened to anything. I was choosing the hard road, and alcoholism and drugs and everything else clouded all of it. And I just kept kicking the can down the street. So I don't know what I would have told me. I don't know. But I just know that there was a lot of pain in my life from my relationship with my mother, or a lot of pain in my life from a lot of different things. I lost my brother in a car accident, around that time. Just a lot of hurt, man. A lot of hurt that I carried.
Would you have potentially told John, maybe a therapist or somebody that could help,
Yeah,
or somebody
that's a
that
good. Yeah,
mental health
yeah.
professional?
Yep, I would have definitely did that. I would have definitely did that. I was a ticking time bomb. I was a ticking time bomb, Ryan, and I would have definitely might have even tried to tell John he needs to go commit himself to into a psychiatric facility.
Right.
Looking back at it, man. But I was just a mess, man. But thank God that He kept me alive through many situations where I should have been dead. And thank God that my children aren't perfect, but they're still alive, and they've all given their lives to the Lord. And thank God that my wife has loved me through my pains, and looking forward to 20 years on our next anniversary. And thank God.
Do you feel like you're a walking testimony? Uh,
Georgia again.
it seemed like it cut out. Okay. All right. There you're back. You're back up. Sorry. You're
Yeah,
good.
yeah. So I have no complaints, man. I'm grateful. I'm grateful for everything, man. And I just see, I don't have all the money I'd love to have. I don't have this, but man, I got a joy on the inside that
Well, that's
I
what I was
haven't had.
asking. Do you feel like you're a walking testimony? Do you feel like you're, the embodiment of change of the love of Christ and what can happen from one place of despair to one place of love and peace?
Yeah, I think I can say that now.
Hmm.
Um, I thought I could say that a year ago or 2 years ago, but I can say it now. I feel clean. I feel clean now.
Mm.
Um, I feel um, I feel free. I feel honest. I'm not hiding. I don't have anything to hide anymore. Man, I could tell you when you're dealing with alcoholism, man, you just hide. I mean, or whether it's lust, pornography, gambling, drugs, whatever, hiding, man, it will wear you down.
Hmm.
It will wear you down, whatever it is. If a person who is cheating or whatever, man, hiding and man, it feels good to not have to turn my phone down, or when I leave the room, it feels good. I don't have to take my phone. I can leave it next to my wife. It feels good that I don't have to pop a mint in so nobody smells the tequila, or it feels amazing to not have any hidden agendas.
Mm.
So it's a new life, man. It's like God has pushed reset.
That's a blessing, like you said, because so many people don't get that opportunity to get that reset, or potentially they end up, unfortunately, in a space they don't want to be in because of that mask and because of that lifestyle that they feel like they just can't get away from. So it's just a blessing that you're able to see it and really change things around. Um,
Yeah.
John, is there any type of organization or charity that's close to you that you want people to check out, whether it's dealing with everything that's going on right now with the virus, or potentially something that you feel like maybe is not getting enough light shed on it?
One thing that's near and dear to my heart, and I can't say there's a specific charity, but one thing that's been near and dear to my heart is, um, we did a lot of ministry. Our primary ministry in the Virgin Islands was in the housing projects
Hmm.
uh, with children, because when you have epidemic or pandemic situations like this, the trickle down is to the poorest people, you
Right.
know, and and the children there. I think about nutrition. I think about mental health. All of these things are neglected, and I realize that sexual abuse and emotional abuse. Think about it. Children in the projects already deal with trauma, but imagine being trapped in a house with parents and grandparents who are still going through trauma. It falls down. It trickles down to the children. So, man, I just think about the children all the time, man. I keep them lifted in prayer, and I think about them, and I miss them. But there's children everywhere that are dealing with, uh, you know, impoverished situations, and they're not in school right now. The worst thing
Hmm.
right now is to deprive our children of education.
John, would
Uh,
you mind giving us a quick prayer to just close this out? I think that it's something that the people need. I think it's something that you're ineptly skilled at, and I think it would be something that would just be amazing for the people to see that are rewatching and potentially checking this out again on days past.
yeah, yeah, sure, sure. Well, let's take time to pray. Go before the Lord. Father, I thank you for Ryan. I thank you for depositing this vision, this task on his heart. Father, I thank you for you orchestrating situations and circumstances that we may not understand, God, but to you be all the glory and the honor and the praise, God. I thank you, God, for his household. I thank you for his wife and his children, God. I thank you that you have positioned them where you've desired for them to be, Father. I pray right now that they would stand firm, that they would be immovable, God, that they would understand that you will lift them up from any trials and tribulations that they may be going through, Father. I thank you right now, God, that you are sovereign, you are in control, God, you are over all and in all. God, although these things are taking us by surprise every day, nothing takes you by surprise, oh God. Father, I pray right now that you would continue to keep all the children, God, in your care, God. I pray right now that you would bless the single mothers, God, who feel like they're overwhelmed right now. Father, I pray that you would touch the pastors, God, who are struggling right now, God, with continuing in their ministry. Father, I pray right now that you would bless marriages like only you can. Father, I thank you right now that you are encouraging students, God, to continue in studies, God, despite classes being canceled. Father, I thank you right now that you are taking those who have lost their employment, God, and you're opening up new doors, God. You're blessing them with new blessings and new mercies. Father, I thank you right now that you have a plan in place, God. I thank you right now, God, that we can seek your face and not just your hand. So, Father, bless this world. God, bless this country. God, bless this city. God, bless our households. Bless our families, God. Father, I pray right now that we would look unto the hills from which cometh our help, recognizing that our help comes from you, Lord. Father, I thank you right now for what you're doing in my household, God. I thank you right now for what you're doing despite, God, this pandemic that's going on. Father, teach us that there is value in our valley. Father, teach us, God, that you're still providing water and rivers in the desert. Father, teach us, God, to appreciate the bread, God. Father, teach us right now, God, to seek you in all situations and circumstances. And we'll be mindful to give you all the praise, all the honor, and all the glory that only you deserve. We love you and we thank you, Lord. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much for just spending time with me, giving me the opportunity to talk to you. I feel like it's been one of the best shows that we've had, and I just thank you. And I'm humbled to, be able to sit at your feet and just be able to take something away from it tonight. And I just love you so much. And
Love you too.
I want you to stay safe out there and make sure, as soon as this thing's over, man, it's gonna be a barbecue. We're gonna be
Yeah,
hitting that
listen,
thing. We're gonna be ready.
listen. You keep, and my word of encouragement to you is what you're doing right now is so important, and you have joy, you have information, you have encouragement, you talk about real issues, what you're doing, and your personality and your gift. This is you. This is you. Like this is incredible. It's amazing. And so don't despise humble beginnings. Just continue to do it, Ryan. Continue to pray about who you have on the show. Keep doing it. Keep encouraging people. And I'm just excited for where you're going, and I'm tuning in to every episode. So
Look, y'all heard it first now. See, he's a
yeah.
person that is non-biased. He's just gonna get on here and say that. So look, I ain't sent him no cash app. He's just there right now.
I love you, man. I
Hey, you
love you,
have a
and I
great night.
appreciate you having me.
Talk to you soon.
All right. Okay. All right. Thanks.